The Witch Collector is the first novel in the Witch Walker series written by Charissa. It falls under the romantasy genre, boasting an enemies to lovers storyline. It was published in 2021 and currently sits at a 3.74 on Goodreads, with most reviews praising the in-depth world building and captivating main characters. I searched up fantasy on my library app and this was one of the suggestions. It's my fault I didn't read the synopsis before reading, but at least I found a new book that I wanted to talk about. Every harvest moon, the Witch Collector rides into our valley and leads one of us to the home of the immortal Frost King to remain forever. Today is that day, collecting day. But he will not come for me. I, Raina Bloodgood, have lived in this village for 24 years, and for all that time he has passed me by. His mistake. Raina Bloodgood has one desire: kill the Frost King and the Witch Collector who stole her sister. On collecting day she means to exact murderous revenge, but a more sinister threat sets fire to her world. Rising from the ashes is the collector, Alexis Thibault, the man she vowed to slay, and the only person who can help save her sister. Thrust into an age-old story of ice, fire, and ancient gods, Raina must abandon vengeance and aid the Witch Collector, or let her empire and her sister fall into the enemy's hands. But the lines between good and evil blur, and Raina has more to lose than she imagined. What is she to do when the Witch Collector is no longer the villain who stole her sister, but the hero who's stealing her heart? Let's read. It's been 8 long years since the Witch Collector took my sister. Every harvest moon he rides into our valley and leads one of us to Winterhold, home of the immortal Frost King, to remain forever. It's been this way for a century, and today is that day, collecting day. But the Witch Collector will not come for me. Of this I am certain. I, Raina Bloodgood, have lived in this village for 24 years, and for 24 years he has passed me by. His mistake. So we're basically just reading the synopsis again in the first chapter. Some women long for a husband, a home, children. Others desire feverish kisses in the shadows, whispers of seduction against their skin. Me, I want my family, together and free. I also want the Frost King and his Witch Collector, dead. And today I make my wish come true. So, good start at not making any sense and trying to make the main character not like other girls. I'm not like other girls who want a family. I want a family, but not in that way, just a better way. Our main character is introduced to us as she steals 2 loaves of bread. She's always been a quiet and stealthy witch, but has never had to use those abilities to thieve before. Raina has a plan to kidnap the Witch Collector, force him to guide her through the forbidden Frostwater Wood, ambush the Northern Frost King's guarded castle, kill the king and take her stolen sister, Nefel, who was taken 8 years ago when Raina was 16, and her family away from this land and find a life far away from the hands of immortal rulers. Except why would she have to leave if she's killed the immortal ruler? And also, where would she go? Today is the day of collection, so she prepares and is planning to use the stolen loaves for food on her journey, and she hides them among a pack she has prepared for said journey. Raina does not live in fear of being chosen by the Witch Collector due to her inability to speak and her lack of visible witch marks that indicate one's ability and strength. The witch collector requires strong witch walkers to sing and weave magic in order to protect the borders and the boundaries of the castle and the kingdom. Though limited by her ability to communicate, she has learnt to weave magic with a language spoken with hands, something she was taught by her mother. How her mother came to know this language is never explained. Her mother has the ability to speak and sing. Raina lives in a village between two of Charissa's continental breaks, the Eastland territories and the southern Summerlands. For centuries, the Eastlanders have tried invading and conquering the southern lands unsuccessfully in order to claim the City of Ruin, a citadel believed to hold the grave of the gods and the burial ground of Charissa's deities. The book here doesn't condemn nor praise the Eastlanders' attempts to invade, which I find a rather missed opportunity, seeing as Raina has a somewhat similar mission to invade the Northlands to kill the king, though her motive is to make them a free land governed by its people, free to live as they choose, which, okay, noble cause. However, the Frost King's rule isn't portrayed as anything that bad. Raina even admits that he has kept war out of their northern lands for centuries, allowing them to live in peace. All he expects is that once a year, one witch comes to serve him at his castle. Though I don't understand why it's forced. We later learn that the Frost King is actually a good and kind person, and that the reason that no one has ever escaped his service is because they believe in his cause and choose to stay. So why do the people believe him a monster? Raina knows that they are chosen to protect the land, so why is it seen as such a horrible thing? She obviously doesn't believe her sister was taken as a sacrifice. She is going to save her, so why is Raina so obsessed with the Frost King's rule? And what's her plan? What does she think will happen when the Frost King is killed? Does she think the Eastlanders will just let them live by their own rule? They've been trying to invade the lands for centuries. You don't think they'll come for you? This book has tried to set up that Raina has a good cause for her plans for murder, while proving none of her reasonings to be sound. I understand wanting to get your sister back, but what does it have to do with freeing the land from a king that provides security and safety to your lands, just to earn some arbitrary freedom from a once-a-year selection, all for the very broad image of freedom for all? I'm all for lobbying your government for improvements. Improvement isn't a stagnant thing. It always needs to be moving, but you haven't provided any convincing image as to why everything needs to be overthrown, especially without a convincing replacement. Where is the poverty, the famine, the death, the slavery, the genocide? Where are all these aspects that would warrant an immediate takeover? Her only grievance with the king is that he stole her sister to serve the country, and that she doesn't have a choice. A choice in what? I'm struggling to understand. She's never going to be drafted. She lives in a peaceful village with good people and isn't forced into a religion she doesn't believe in, a job she hates. What choices are actively being taken away from her? She even admits that she adds her own voice to the protection spell around the forest every now and again. So what is the issue? A thud interrupts her preparation, and she finds a dying dove on her doorstep, and using her healing magic, she steals the dove's impending death and sets it free. This magic is incredibly powerful and incredibly rare. If the Frost King grew aware of her abilities, she would be taken, so her mother has instructed her to keep it hidden as well. Her mother returns with an armful of apples from the orchard harvest. She tells Raina she has a good feeling about this year's collection day. Which, okay, what does that mean? That maybe someone they hate will be collected? Like, what a strange thing to say. Raina goes to get her tools to assist her mother with preparing the apples for the collecting day feast, and retrieves a knife she calls the God Knife. If you were wondering how Raina thought she would kill an immortal being, this here is her weapon. It belonged to her father and is said to have been fashioned by an Eastern sorcerer called Andralag from the broken ribs of a long-dead god. It is believed to be able to kill anyone and anything, the blessed and the cursed, the forever living and the risen dead, even other gods. She starts to attempt to sharpen it, under the pretense she's sharpening it to peel apples, not stab it through the heart of the Frost King, but injures herself, and her mother begs her to take it to Finn Owen, the local family blacksmith, so he can sharpen it for her since she's so adamant to use it. She heads off and runs into the family, exiting a temple after their morning prayer, praying to the god Neri, who according to Raina is a selfish bastard who's been dead for 300 years. One of the Owen girls, Helena, who is 19 years old, spots her and the family go over to greet her. The whole family dabble in fire magic, but mainly can only use common magic, like the rest of the village. So it appears that there are some magic that everyone can learn, such as this common magic and fire magic, since Raina dabbles in this herself later on in the book. But there are other magic, like Raina's healing ability, that is only able to be performed if you are born with it. It's not really explained well, but I assume it has something to do with what strands people are able to see and weave together, so I can only assume that no one else can see the strands required to heal another. Maybe it is explained, but I don't get it though. Raina notices the mood is low and that some of the members of the family are missing. Helena informs Raina that their father, along with the other feast hunters, haven't returned yet with their kill for the harvest, and they are worried something has happened. She joins them in a prayer for their safe return and continues on to find Finn at the blacksmith shop and asks him to sharpen her knife. He grows suspicious as the knife is far too large to peel apples, so she lies in order to convince him to help her. Finn and Raina used to be very close. He was hers and she his, but due to their differing life choices, him wanting to settle with a family and her wanting to leave and explore the world, decided to end their relationship 3 years ago, though she never left the Vale, and this plan to kill the Frost King only materialized a few weeks ago. So what was keeping her in the village for all those years after their breakup? Finn deduces that she is trying to kill the witch collector and the Frost King and tries to dissuade her, reminding her that her own parents were guards of the king and never tried to harm him, even though they were in possession of the knife. They were granted leave from duty after Raina's mother became pregnant with Nefel, and after the southern queen Fiadruma, or the Fire Queen, killed the East King Ragnar during a conflict between the two territories, simmering the tensions as the two territories licked their wounds, and the East appointed a new mysterious, no-named king. Raina refutes Finn's argument, reminding him she is not her parents, and though unsure why they never tried, she makes her own decisions and she hopes that he will believe in her. Finn explains that he does believe in her and that he too hates the Frost King. Again, why? And though he will sharpen the knife for her, he will not stand there and watch her kill the witch collector. So why sharpen it in the first place? What's with all these extra steps? I'm going to help you do the thing I don't want you to do, so at the last minute I can stop you from doing the thing I'm helping you do that I don't want you to do. I was recently watching a critique on horror movies, and it was discussing that the reason why some horror movies become such classics is because even though the characters do all the right things, the monster still comes out on top, and that's what's truly scary. That we can try to make all the right decisions do all the right things and still be one step behind? Why can't Finn make the right decision by stopping Rhaena from the Witch Collector and the Frost King, only for it not to work because she was one step ahead? I wouldn't be here then tearing my hair out over the stupidity of their actions. Though at this stage she doesn't believe the Witch Collector to be immortal and believes him an old frail man, so she doesn't need the knife to scare him. She could always just control the Witch Collector with any old knife and demand he steal the knife from Finn before leaving on her way to the castle. Or she could just bring the knife with her and find someone along the way to sharpen it for her. There's lots of other options here. The next chapter is now in the perspective of someone called Alexis, who over the course of the chapter we discover is the Witch Collector. He is conversing with another man, Colden Musaka, who is the Frost King, and he has a bad feeling about something. Alexis is currently on his trek to the villages for the witch collecting ceremony, and while already running behind the schedule, has had an unexpected visit from the Frost King. Alexis acknowledges Colden's bad feeling, but reminds him that he's never missed a collecting day, and the villagers' lives must continue as normal as to not cause unnecessary panic until they can discover the truth. And he must go to the Vale to retrieve a mysterious girl in order to find that truth anyway. They need her abilities to see the actions another person is making in order to determine the validity of a rumour that the Prince of the East has broken King Ragnar's peace agreement, and if he has discovered Colden's secret involving the Fire Queen, then the East would stop at nothing to destroy everyone. Alexis reassures him, reminding him of their impenetrable defences and dangerous terrain that would make it impossible for the Eastlanders to traverse into their land to hurt their people, and that his former lover, the Fire Queen, can handle herself. You can't have it both ways, my friend. We can't get the truth without a seer, and we can't consult a seer if I don't go to the Vale. I must get this girl. It's the only way to end this worry. The girl with no voice and no witch marks, the so-called seer, Rhaena Bloodgood. During her time with the Frost King, Nefel had bonded with the Witch Collector, however only revealed this information to him recently, wishing to protect her sister from being collected like herself. He questions why she would deny the entire kingdom of such important protection, and wonders how he was unable to see such power in her at the collection ceremonies. He goes on to talk about how he feels bad about breaking his word about not collecting her, but Nefel wouldn't have told him this if she didn't realise that Rhaena needed to be collected. The two part ways, Colden travelling back to the kingdom to continue working their magic to protect the borders, and Alexis travelling onwards towards Rhaena. Back at the village, Rhaena is helping prepare for the collection ceremony. She helps her mother with preparing dishes and helps set up the location with Mr. Foley and Mina. Rhaena has formed a strong bond with Mina over their shared loss of loved ones to the collection, and Mina just randomly shoots out some words of wisdom that she is more capable than she believes, and that victory only comes through sacrifice. Rhaena is deeply moved by Mina's words, and they continue preparing. She tries to take a moment for herself to slip away and use her seer abilities to determine what has happened to the hunters and the location of the witch collector, but her mother and Finn's presence are ever so present. Her and Finn take a moment away together, and out of nowhere, as per the text, but yes, accurate, he tells Rhaena he loves her. He wanted her to hear this, knowing of her plan and his plan to stop her, but only at the last minute, of course. She returns the sentiment, signing that she loves him too. Finn attempts to get her to change her mind, sprouting some very convincing arguments, like the freedom she wishes for might not even exist, and that she is willing to walk away from everything for a dream. Rayna is appalled at the audacity and basically calls him a coward. But again, you have shown me no reason to believe that this is a prison, as you so pleasantly put it, and that you are lacking all choice. All I see is a bunch of people unwilling to sacrifice for victory, as so eloquently put by Mina, in order to protect the peace that everyone has worked so hard to maintain. Why is this ceremony required? What are the torturous rumours that cause everyone to hate the idea of being collected? And how are the rumours allowed to spread? I want to root for this main character, but she's just not giving me any reason to. They sit in silence, and Rayna feels the god knife at her thigh burning cold. I was surprised. The book doesn't say when she got this back, so I assumed Finn still had it and was waiting for him to hand it back to her, so I could see the interaction and try to see how he justifies giving it back to her despite not wanting her to continue with her plan. However, the scene was just craftily cut so as to not cause unnecessary conflict that might affect the flow of the narrative. The two sit and wait for a long time, awaiting the witch collector's arrival, time that could have been better spent with Rayna slipping away under the cover of requiring the bathroom and using that time to use her seeing abilities. But no, we've forgotten for this part of the novel that was a concern of Rayna's up until this point. The village is on edge and decide to prepare themselves for the harvest supper, keeping their hands busy so as to not allow their minds to spiral. Rayna finally ditches Finn and finds her scrying dish to use it to find the locations of the hunters, only to find that they were in a drunken stupor somewhere in the woods. It's just stupid. She then locates the position of the witch collector, finding that he is still coming, though late, and throws the water from the dish in a rage, preparing herself for his imminent arrival. Back with Alexis, he decides not to ride straight for Rayna's village, Silver Hollow, but to stop over in the other villages to inform them they haven't been chosen for selection this year. This to me appears to be a rather inefficient way to recruit people. So this has been happening for, was it 100 years? So one person a year, so 100 mortal people have been recruited. Keyword mortal. They wouldn't have accumulated 100-person army. You know, at most they might have, I don't know, 60, 70, but I think even that might be generous. If they lost a lot of people, it would be impossible to reaccumulate their numbers effectively with this method. Do they have a set number of jobs? Are all these jobs appropriately filled? Are they short-staffed and maybe some of the wards are less effective as they should be? Or what if they have excess numbers? Are those witches sitting around twiddling their thumbs? I might understand that it requires only 70 witches to man the borders, so maybe one year they take no one, another they require 3 and replace the others, but 1 a year just doesn't make sense to me, unless there was a specific role they needed to do, but there isn't. They just join the witch walkers and protect the border. But am I getting this all wrong, and does he actually take one from every village? But then again, that doesn't make any sense, because what if he collects too much? Like, it's just not fleshed out enough, and I'm confused at how this all works. Alexis arrives at a village on horseback and informs them that they are spared, and they request he join them for the harvest celebration. So does he go to every village every year? How many villages are there? How long does this all take? How does he transport the people back? What if the village has no horses, because he hasn't brought any with him? What normally happens? What does he normally do at each village? This part of the book is supposed to set up the usual normal that is then upended with the inciting incident, but I still don't know what the usual normal is. He refuses their request, informing them he cannot stay, before a young boy appears at his feet. Alexis, before he thinks better of it, jumps from his horse, grabs the boy, and whirls him through the air like father and son, with a huge smile on his face. The villagers gawk at this interaction. What a strange thing to do. What a strange way to show that he's actually soft and tender and not cruel and harsh. What prompted him to do this? How are there rumours spreading of his and the Frost King's cruelty when he so impulsively makes a decision to get off his horse, pick up the boy, and swing him around? This isn't a split-second decision. There were a lot of steps that had to be taken in order to pull that off. I'm just baffled. The interaction is cut short by a sudden cacophony of screaming horses. They soon hear the beat of hooves and the rising of smoke on the horizon as fire-tipped arrows descend on the villagers. The village is under attack. Surrounded by the wails of the dead, Alexis turns to the boy and his mother and instructs them to run to safety, then mounts his horse Manus and rides to meet the intruders. Eastland warriors crash through the glade towards him. He engages them in battle and sustains an injury to his right arm. After slaying one man, he comes face to face with a red-headed warrior with a familiar face who unexpectedly turns and rides away. Alexis considers chasing him, but the scene behind him takes precedence and he rides through the burning village to save the mother and the kid before he flees to another village on the instruction of the elder to warn the other villagers of their impending attack. He makes it to the next village barely before the Eastlanders, so is unable to provide an adequate heads up, but is able to send a messenger and some villagers towards the next village to inform them. He later joins them and they put in a valiant effort, however are unable to overcome the army. Faced with the burden of saving those in front of him, or the whole north, Alexis decides to abandon the village and ride for Silver Hollow before the Eastlanders retrieve Raina. Raina and the village of Silver Hollow are undisturbed by the invasion of the East for the moment and engage in merriment of the harvest feast. Raina grapples with her plan to leave her family and friends behind, and her mother tries to get her to relax by telling her there is no collection this year, which how did they know that? Alexis decided not to head directly for Silver Hollow because he had to tell the other villagers they were safe, so how did her mother discover this? Raina starts to relax and she spots Helena, who approaches her. She's still worried about her father and the other missing hunters, and invites Raina to come with her before dawn to search for them. Raina tries to reassure her without revealing her abilities, but Helena is steadfast. She needs her father to return so she can enlist for the watch, otherwise she wouldn't be able to leave her family without a protector. Though Helena is a daughter of a blacksmith, she has taken an interest in swordplay and has become an adept and confident fighter. Raina eventually finds herself alone again, only to run into Finn. Now wonderfully drunk, she dances with him, and in her vulnerability, Finn steals the god knife, teasing her to come and get it before racing off towards the orchards. She goes to chase him, but in that moment she hears the arrival of the Eastlanders on the outskirts of the village. In the panic of the unknown, the witch collector bursts into the crowd and orders them to prepare for a fight. Raina's mother tries to get Raina to flee, but she chooses to stay and fight. She arms herself with a sky and prepares herself with the knowledge she gained from sparring with Helena. Standing in the village awaiting the horde of Eastlanders, she spots the witch collector on his horse, searching for something, and her anger and fury bloom. I could kill him now. A blow from behind, rid the world of his dreadful presence. With my jaw clenched tight, I take a step closer, another, and another. A girl points at me, and my last step comes up short. The witch collector twists in his saddle and meets my gaze. I swear the air between us becomes electric. Heart stuttering, I freeze. He spears me with a piercing look and tilts his dark head. Those green eyes narrow. He's handsome in a wicked, dark way, beautiful even. The moment stretches between us, whisper thin, taut, and unbearable. His stare is so penetrating, it's like he's peering into my soul, prying through the cobwebby corners I show no one. This book boasts an enemies to lovers arc. There is no arc. It's instant. She's already attracted to him in their first meeting. It's so unsatisfactory. This is the guy who you have spent all this time up until this moment hating. And this is how their first introduction is written. Also, why is she trying to kill him now? Wasn't her plan to capture him so he would lead her to the Frost King and then kill them? She was ready to completely uproot her whole plan just so the scene could play out this way. She comes back to reality and remembers her character motivations, so stands down, puts her scythe at her feet, and starts to sign the Song of Protection, joining in with the other witches to build a protective dome over their heads. But it's to no avail, as the flaming arrows pierce the veil and rain down on the remaining villagers, and the Eastlanders charge into the village. Alexis grapples with his conscience, whether to stay and fight or flee. But during his internal battle, Raina runs off and he is forced to fight for his life. Finn arrives in the nick of time to save his life and accidentally drops the god knife and flees with his family. Alexis spots Raina again, and the book tries to convince us that Raina wasn't actually attracted to him at first sight. But I just read what you wrote. He watches her run towards her mother as she is using strong magic and realizes just how powerful her mother is and how her mother must have been shielding Raina's abilities from him somehow. I don't know how, and I don't know if this is something others are capable of, or why. Since it's supposedly so bad to go off and become a witch collector, why others aren't employing these powers to hide themselves and their kin. It would be a rather interesting conversation, however it's not required obviously, since it's only a plot device for Raina. Alexis watches as two Eastlanders ride upon the two women, and he realizes he recognizes the man as the Prince of the East. Raina is just badass, attacking people left and right like she's always done this and hasn't grown up as, well, whatever she's grown up as, and gets so close to her mother just as the Prince of the East slays her, and Raina is forced to watch her mother die, unable to reach her in time to stop it from happening. Raina blames herself, suggesting that if she only scryed earlier, she could have seen this occurring to the other villagers and gotten everybody here to safety before the Eastlanders arrived, which is a great setup for a character motivation that rarely impacts any of the decisions she makes. The Prince of the East strides towards Raina, who crumples into a heap of misery, and he speaks the worst dialogue. like, fiery little thing, and pity to kill such a fighter, but much as I'd like to see you in chains, you'd only be a distraction. Just incredibly slimy and revolting. I feel like it was trying for something more than what I interpreted, but it just makes me cringe and shudder in disgust. I don't know if it was trying to emulate like the Joker, but I just don't see it done very well. Unless, of course, you wanted him to come across as a joke. This man does not strike fear into my heart. He goes to strike her dead, but Raina summons enough strength to block his blow from piercing her, but the force knocks her back, somehow far enough that now the Witch Collector stands between them both. The prince overpowers the Witch Collector easily and stabs him in the chest a few times for good measure and throws him to the ground. Advancing again on Raina, she avoids his charge and collects Alexis's sword, ramming it to the hilt into the prince's chest, only for him to explode in a gust of crimson smoke. In astonishment, Raina finally notices her hands are covered in witch marks, where prior there were none, now no longer hidden by her mother's magic. She feels a surge of energy consume her, as though suddenly released from their cage, and she spots the god knife within the grass below her, as though fate placed it there for her. And thank God she spotted it, because just then the prince reappears behind her, and Raina is able to use the god knife to slash a gash across the prince's face, from his left temple to the right of his jawline. He stares at her incredulous, and attempts to take the knife from her, to no avail. Realizing defeat, he leaves her with some parting words. "We'll meet again, keeper, and when we do, I'm going to drive that knife into your heart and inhale your pathetic little soul." It didn't convince me that he lost the upper hand, so him retreating here didn't make all that much sense to me. I can see an argument could be made, and it kind of is in this book, that we're supposed to believe that the cut from the god knife will eventually kill him. However, he just told her that they will meet again, and he has indicated that he knows what the knife is. So why would I trust the word of the person who doesn't really know what the knife is, compared to the person that probably does? The book tries to build this tension around whether the guy died or not, but I think this attempt at a mysterious and badass parting line negates all that tension building up, because I know he didn't die, and I never felt uncertainty or the need to second guess that. Raina struggles to her feet and rushes to her mother's side, attempting to find any form of life so that she can try to revive her. She wallows in the destruction of her life when she feels a hand on her shoulder, and upon turning finds the Witch Collector clinging to life. Engorged with anger, she draws the god knife to his throat and considers ending his life then and there. He begs her to save his life, revealing he knows of her abilities due to witnessing her attempt to save her mother's life. She struggles with a decision, believing he is the last person she should save, but also the only other life among the death and destruction that surrounds her. But evidently, she decides that his life isn't worth saving and stands to leave. Which, okay, but what about your plan to have him lead you to Nefel? How are you going to get there without him? But there's no need for us to worry. The book just needed a cool cliffhanger to leave the chapter on, because she literally turns around and comes back to revive him in the next chapter. A chapter from Alexis's point of view, so that we don't get to see inside Raina's head and understand what made her change her mind. Because, I don't know, it would have been difficult to write. I feel rather cheated You give us her conflict over whether to kill or heal. Instead of having her be the killing hand, she just decides to walk away, even though her whole driving force up until this point is that she wants to take her own destiny into her hands instead of letting others dictate her life. So why wouldn't she take the destiny of killing the witch collector into her own hands instead of just letting him bleed out from a wound he sustained from somebody else? And for all of this to not actually make any sense, because her plan was to kidnap him so he could lead her to her sister. So her even considering having him die is just so inconceivable, because if he dies, so does her chance of seeing her sister again. Raina passes out from the exertion of bringing someone back from the brink of death, and she comes in and out of consciousness. Once she finally awakes, she finds herself on the outskirts of the valley, encased in a dark cloak that smells like spices and sandalwood, juniper and sheep fat. I've never really understood this need to go overboard with writing the scents of people. It's like all these authors read that cliche Pinterest writing advice that when you write a scene, you need to include all the senses to make it realistic, and they just go overboard with it. Instead of immersing me in the scene, I find it really jarring and confusing. Like, how do they smell of all those things and not like body odor and blood? I'm listening to a story because it's my friend's favorite series, and they said one of the men smelled like fire. Like, fire doesn't have a scent. It's the smell of burnt material. So you're going to have to clarify, because burnt wood smells very different to burnt dog poo. It's just a nitpick I have. I know others enjoy it. Looking around at her surroundings, she notices Alexis at the river's edge, and she takes the time to study his appearance and how contradicting it is. I mean, I don't want to judge the woman, but if I was just kidnapped by my sworn enemy after my village was massacred and my mother just died, I wouldn't be wondering why this person, who I believed was intimidating, hard and unstoppable, was actually just a soft boy, just because he's performing a ritual that Raina's people do for their dead. I would assume she would be suspicious. I thought that was the picture we were painting, but instead she's entranced by him. Again, how can you sell an enemies to lovers narrative when their attraction is instant, when they don't go through any effort to uncover the beauty beneath their supposed ugly exteriors, the things that made them enemies in the first place? Undermining every bad thing they did to each other by implying it was all a misunderstanding can be satisfactory if written well. I just haven't seen it work well yet. Now, I don't want to be all rude, because I think the book does include some realistic emotion here regarding the death and destruction she has just witnessed. We just needed to make sure the reader realised that these two loved each other first. But now that's done, we can remember that her mother did just die in front of her eyes. Raina struggles to come to terms with her reality, and Alexis tries to comfort her by washing her face with water and reassuring her that she is now safe, and he thanks her for saving his life. With her mind clearer, Raina realises that the witch collector knew who she was and questions him about that. To her shock, he answers her with her hand language. He informs her that Nefel taught him. Furious, believing he is lying, she attacks him, and it becomes really uncomfortable, with him overpowering her and pushing her up against a tree, and him looking at her like she's a savage and telling her to calm down. It's just icky. I don't like it when these books do this to women, put them in these compromising positions like it's sexy, and call them savages or trouble. Like, a human fighting back against a predator is strange. It's like when a woman isn't placid or just blindly complies, then it's surprising and usually a turn on. Like, yes, Continue showing us that you believe women are these subspecies that have no free will, and when they start behaving like a man, it's a shock. But of course they are only acting like that to appeal to you, not because they have the ability to think and act like a man. How could they? They're just a woman. It just feels demeaning and infantilizing. Like, how cute. I feel like it's how a person reacts to a dog smiling or a dog remembering what time it is to be fed. Like, you didn't expect a stupid dog to be able to do human things like show emotions or tell the time and react like how cute a dog is trying to act like a human, but they're not really. It's like, wow, I didn't realize a woman wouldn't just automatically realize how much smarter and superior in knowledge I am and not just go along with my decision. But it's so cute that they think that they can defy me and be on the same level. Here, have a treat, because that was so cute and so sexy. But remember, you're not on my level. I feel so upset when I see a woman perpetrating this, because a lot of these books are written by women. Is this really how you see yourself? Is this what you believe about women? I just find it so sad that we keep dismissing our emotions and reactions because we are human beings. We are supposed to feel this. We are supposed to feel upset when someone insults us, happy when we see joy, angry when we see injustice. We are so complex and constantly changing. It's just so sad that people have such poor self-image of themselves that they believe so little in themselves. After Alexis insults her again, and she just lets him, because how dare she not trust him instantly? How dare she not be rational and act like a feral animal when her enemy kidnaps her and may or may not have had some part in the reason why her whole village is destroyed and dead? She asks him why did Nefel teach him her language, and he informs her that they are friends and that he had promised Nefel that he would never take Raina on collecting day because their mother needed her. Raina calls him a liar and calls him out, since he obviously broke his promise not to collect her, and he explains that 1. He wanted to bring her to the castle to keep her safe, since they heard the Prince of the East would break the treaty, and 2. Nefel revealed that she also had the power of sight, her ability to scry. If they had someone with that ability, then they could have foreseen this attack, and now the prince is on his way to capture the Frost King, so the two of them must now try to get there first. Raina feels betrayed by her sister, but agrees that their journey is for the greater good, and finally realizes that the god knife is no longer in her possession, and thinks maybe Alexis has it, and then swiftly forgets about it again because it's not like it held any strong meaning to her in any way. Oh my god, this book does it too. I didn't realize it until rereading it to create this script, but while we're waiting for Raina to recover her strength, she goes into the river to wash the scent of fire from her dress and hair. Wait, am I the one that's wrong? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe fire does have a scent. Alexis leaves to pick up supplies, so Raina decides to scry the prince to see if she was successful in killing him, and sees an unblinking face staring back at her, so just assumes she was successful. She decides not to scry Helena and Finn, because she can't bear to see if they did not survive. But we all know Finn is alive, because there are other books, and we can't not have a love triangle. Alexis returns with another horse for Raina, a few skins of water, several apples, and a loaf of stale bread, plus some other things. She does remember the god knife a few times here, but doesn't really tie any emotion to its loss, instead just querying where she could have left it. Like, this is your last tie to your father, and also without it you cannot carry out this plan you've spent so much time thinking over. Why are you so calm about it? Instead, we just get paragraphs of how hot Alexis is and how shy Raina is to be around him. He even mutilates the dress her mother painstakingly made for her, and she just goes along with it because, well, it makes sense. She even says it is one of the last things she has of her mother, but doesn't push back or try to come up with another way to preserve this thing that should mean so much to her. The two finally head off to the forest with their meagre food supplies that really shouldn't last them more than a day, heck, 2 if they're lucky. I thought they had been resting for a few days, but then Raina says, but stealing death for a person? Last night, thanks to desperation, I'd held enough faith I could save Mother and Alexis, but there was never any guarantee. So you're telling me it's literally the next day? That seems impossible since the attack happened at night. Raina passed out like 4 times, and Alexis had to travel to a town to collect supplies. How did this all happen in the span of half a day? They arrive at the forest edge and come across a weak spot, so Raina uses her power, since the witch collector doesn't have any, we will find out why later, to try to break through, but is unsuccessful. So Alexis helps her and does that creepy thing that people do. You know, they stand uncomfortably close and lean over you to guide your hands. I know it's supposed to be romantic, but in reality, it's usually a creep doing this to a young person, and my bias just can't get past that. They successfully break through, and Alexis explains to Raina that they are about a week's ride from the castle and a day and a half behind the Eastlanders. But the attack happened last night, so how are they so far behind? The witch walkers should ensure their magic doesn't attack the two when they enter, but they might not be able to help them traverse the forest as they will be preoccupied by the Eastlanders. But Alexis believes they will be trying to keep them off the road, so that's where they'll head in order to save the king. Raina balks at this, reminding Alexis she's only coming to save her sister and doesn't care if the king lives or dies. Raina decides that she's going to go at this alone. What? And Alexis reveals to her that Nefel and the Frost King are in a relationship, so she probably won't leave willingly, and becomes mad at her for, I don't know, not trusting the man she hardly knows, and he just leaves her, riding off into the forest, knowing full well that there are Eastlanders prowling around that just committed mass murder on her village. Like, he was so mad that she was so stupid to want to go off on her own, so he just forces her hand and leaves her alone? Why do the thing you thought was so stupid to do? What an awful person. Raina decides to follow him at a distance, and they ride the rest of the day like that. So he must see her following him, but does nothing to let her catch up. She doesn't know this forest. Anything could happen, from environmental issues, wild animals, or even an Eastlander attack. He's just so irresponsible. How could he let his anger win out over safety? They would be safer together, he with her and her with him, but he's too much of an asshole to swallow his pride. Also, I hope he split the food and water, because if she's riding a whole day without sustenance, that's just cruel. She ends up losing him around a corner, and she starts to spiral, fearing for her life, when he just pops up behind her to tell her that he didn't take her for such a difficult student. So demeaning. How dare a human defy you, O mighty Lord? Like, screw off. How dare you let her believe that she is left for dead just so you can teach her a lesson of not talking back or questioning a stranger. It's gross. I really despise this, and it makes me incredibly sad to see this written by a woman. He eventually apologizes, saying, I reacted harshly earlier. Frostwater is no place for anyone who hasn't travelled its ground many times. I only wanted to keep you safe, and you were being impossible. You were the one who left her, and yet you wanted to keep her safe? Like, screw off. They settle in for the night, talk about Nefel, and bond a little. But it's not really relevant since she's already been incredibly intimate with him, so this isn't like a learn to trust each other moment. But we got to learn a little bit more about Nefel, which is cool. There's no mention of eating here. Raina just goes to sleep, and the face of the prince watches her in her dreams. Once morning arrives, they continue on without breakfast, since it's not mentioned, traversing the forest when they are ambushed by a lone Eastlander who gets the jump on Alexis, but Raina is able to kill the man. Again tasked with saving Alexis's life, she uses her healing abilities, but discovers the strands she needs to weave his wounds back together are different than others. His have frayed edges and double the amount. I don't know why she didn't realise this the first time she healed him. But they continue on the path, Raina fighting the need to rest and Alexis still unconscious on his horse's back, until Raina reaches a frozen lake and conveniently Alexis wakes up. They decide to brave crossing the lake, hoping the witch walkers will realise it's them and not activate the trap. Partway along the trek, they come across the remains of the Eastlanders who were caught up in the trap, now lurking under the surface of the ice in their frosty tomb. Just as they make it to the edge, Alexis is again ambushed by a woman who throws herself at him and they topple back out onto the lake. The woman is on Alexis like a starving dog. Again, what is with this book referring to women as animals? And they grapple with each other, trading blows. He finally has her and is about to kill her when he hesitates, realizing she smells like death and her eyes are milky and clouded. Distracted, Raina hurtles into the fray, knocking the woman from his grasp. They watch each other, the woman's eyes now unclouded, as Raina frantically signs to her and they embrace each other, allowing Alexis to realize who this woman is. It's Helena. Helena catches Raina up on how she ended up here, explaining she was kidnapped by the Eastlanders and managed to escape after they had crossed the lake and were attacked by some wolves further up on the trail. She hid out, trying to stave off the cold, unable to cross the lake again when she saw them both approaching, but doesn't seem to remember attacking Alexis. Surprisingly, she's not hungry, though no one appears to be in this book. Maybe because they're magic, they can go days without eating. Alexis informs them they should continue, and Helena's demeanour changes, appearing agitated and irritated at Alexis, and grabs Raina's horse, announcing they'll be riding together. They ride for 2 days, only resting once. Again, no mention of food, and I don't know how a loaf of bread and several apples are supposed to sustain 3 adults and 2 horses for this long, but sure. Raina dozes off and again sees the Prince of the East's face, but this time he speaks to her a greeting. She startles awake and the trio decide to find somewhere to spend the night. Alexis asks Helena to help him start a fire, but she refuses, stealing herself away further under the ledge they've stopped at for the night. Alexis again does this supposedly romantic move of helping Raina conjure a fire, but alas, to no success, so he just ends up using a tinderbox to light one and they fall asleep without eating again. They wake up entwined together. Raina quickly untangles herself from Alexis, embarrassed. Helena sends an icy stare her way and reminds Raina that Alexis is supposed to be her enemy. Alexis leaves to feed the horses. It seems to be the first time they've been fed in days, and brings over an apple, half a loaf of bread and a flask of water, and tuck into their first food in days. How has this not affected them? Why was there no talk of hunger until now? How are they not losing their minds? These characters do not feel real. Yes, you will argue that it happened off page. Sure, if that works for you, I'm happy. But for me, if it's not written, then it didn't happen. You don't get a free ride from your readers. You don't even need to write it every time. You just need to establish that they sleep, eat, and poop. I just can't relate to these characters, and I'm constantly pulled out of the narrative because I'm questioning what the logistics are and how they're surviving. This would be so much more immersive if we watched these people actually struggle to survive, have to work together to ration food and warmth, see tempers flare, and an attempt to communicate while starving and freezing. I just feel no tension. I'm not questioning whether they will survive or not. Just none of this seems believable. They continue on, find another mass grave of Easterners in the snow, and they stop to loot the bodies for weapons. They follow Helena for several hours through a blizzard and suddenly realise they're going in circles when Raina recognises a tree they passed earlier. Alexis decides they need to try going another way. They need to head for the fork in the path and take the route towards the mountains. And then he asks Helena to lead them there. Not sure why we were following Helena. She doesn't know the area either. So why was Alexis keeping up this charade for hours? Helena opposes him, I think, though she just says why doesn't he confer with his witches and that she can't know how they manipulate this construct. And he somehow interprets that to mean she wants to keep going her way, instead of interpreting that she means she probably isn't the best guide because the witches might not know her and so are trying to trap her. Which I thought made more sense at this stage, seeing as we don't know Helena is possessed. Sorry, spoilers. So he just gets pissed off, says we aren't continuing like this. He's been more than patient with our guide and asks if Raina is with him or not. So is he deciding to abandon another person alone in the snow over his ego again? What's his problem? She didn't even say anything about not going with him. I can't even see how he interpreted that. It feels like there's missing conversation here that was cut, because it's just not making sense. Before Raina can make her decision, Helena makes it for her, telling the witch collector that she's with her and that they won't be following him into the mountains. Raina becomes wary of Helena and dismounts the horse. Helena growls at Raina to get back on, and scarlet-tinted shadows start leaking from her body. Alexis realises she's been possessed by a wraith and grabs Raina protectively. Wraith Helena dismounts and reveals she was sent by the prince to kidnap Raina and prepares to attack, unsheathing the god knife from her belt. Why then has she been charading around for several hours today, walking in circles in the snow? Why did she sleep all night and not take Raina when everyone was defenseless? Alexis and Raina didn't fall asleep in each other's arms. She could have easily gotten her then. Why did she not do anything up until now? It's just so stupid. In order to kill a wraith, the host must be killed instantly to ensure the wraith doesn't have time to escape and inhabit another host. Alexis lets Raina do this because she should be the one to kill her friend. Okay, but what? That's so stupid. You're going to make the person who has only ever killed one person who was distracted trying to kill you land a precise shot at someone she loves when there is no room for error. Because if she fails, you and her could get possessed. Do you not understand that? Why would he think this is a good idea? She's not trained to kill. Even if she was, you're asking her to kill her best friend. I wouldn't trust her to be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to do that. I don't think a lot of people could do that, even if they were trained to kill. There is no room for error. So, yeah, let's just send in our rookie who has an emotional connection to the person we need to kill. Nothing's gonna go wrong there. The wraith ends up retreating into Helena, letting her come to the surface, and she cries out to Raina to save her. Raina hesitates, and the wraith sweeps her off her feet and rushes at Alexis, pinning him beneath her body, and kisses him. And, well, he really seems to be enjoying it. Need builds inside me. A need to inhale her, to let her flood me, filling my every cell with her presence. Wanting more, I slide my hands up her body and thread my fingers into the black curtain of her hair. I fist the silkiness and crush her to me, my own hunger taking over, craving something dark and carnal only she can give. Her mouth is a fount, my only relief. Remember, this is a being that reeks of death. Wow, so hot. My panties are so wet. The Wraith stops kissing him, saying in surprise that it's you, and that she wasn't sure and she didn't believe, but she tastes the shade inside of him. Very mysterious there. She kisses him again and he falls into an abyss, swallowed by memories of his late wife and son's deaths. He eventually plummets to the deepest part of himself, where he keeps something caged within him, and he can feel the wraith attempting to let it free. Alexis begs for someone to help him when he suddenly feels a sensation of pain and is brought back to reality to find Helena's hand wrapped around the edge of a sword that Raina swung at her. Before anyone can move, the ground starts to shake and Helena is snagged by saplings that have come to life, and a prison made out of trees traps her within. They leave her there, knowing that Nefel made this prison and will keep her safe until the Wraith leaves her. I shouldn't gloss over it, but Raina does have some human emotion here. So I know this author can do it. I just don't understand why it's been forgotten in other places. Raina says goodbye to Helena and promises she will come back for her, and it's sweet. And they leave, but Alexis is scared because now that the Wraith knows who he really is, the Prince of the East probably knows too, and he's unsure what that means for the world. Raina grabs the god knife before they depart, and they continue on for another 3 days at least, with their meagre supplies somehow lasting them. The story is hilarious. The two are riding together, probably for warmth, but more likely for the trope. And Raina is thinking about how any discomfort at him being so near has vanished, and they weren't like strangers anymore, and certainly nothing like enemies. Okay, we get it. This is supposed to be an enemies to lovers book. Maybe you should have just written that instead of trying to convince us it is. They rest a bit during this journey and nibble on what they can from the pack, but mention the apples were ruined, so the only thing they could nibble on was the bread. So what's with the vagueness? Or did we just forget that they didn't pack anything else? During one of their rests, Raina asks Alexis what the Prince of the East wants with the Frost King. Alexis explains he's uncertain what his ultimate goal is and doesn't really elaborate further. They wonder what the prince wants with Raina, and she notices crows following them, realizing the prince is watching her through them, and becomes angry when suddenly she notices a thin clearing beyond the path's edge and realizes Nefel has created a small sanctuary for them to rest and recuperate. The two head for it and find a spring meadow with dry kindling, logs for resting, and moonberry bushes full of ripe fruit. With her resolve returned, Raina approaches one of the crows and with her bare hands snatches it from its branch and snaps its neck, sending a message back to the prince that he shouldn't mess with her. I'm going to say this here, but this book is incredibly boring. All I can think about is what's happening at the castle. How are they coping with the impending doom approaching? How are the Eastlanders faring, struggling through the Frost Kingdom, facing death at every turn, but still pressing on? And all those cool traps, they all sound like much better stories than watching these two trudge through the snow and telling me over and over again that they like each other. This could have been a good story if the author really played up these interpersonal relationships and actually had conflict between these two differing personalities. The two cook up the bird and fill up on that and berries, feeling warm and content for the first time in a while. Alexis tells Raina she should try to get some sleep, and Raina is turned on by his concern for her. She holds his hand, tracing the marks of his palm, and thinks about how she's an impulsive, impatient, and imaginative person. You could have fooled me. And how Alexis has earned her trust. Which, okay, thanks for telling me, but you could have just written scenes that indicate she had to learn to trust him. Because you didn't, so here you are trying to tell us like we didn't just read the first half of the book. She trusted him from the moment she met him. She decided to trust him when she stopped herself from killing him and called a truce. She continued to follow him when they entered the woods, even though he tried to abandon her. So why would she do that if she didn't trust him? Stop trying to tell me you wrote something you didn't actually write. Trust is earned, and though he hadn't had very much time to do so, he's only proven himself as unfailing. He left you to traverse the woods by yourself on the first day. He was going to leave Helena because she wanted to go a different way than him before he knew she was a wraith. Unfailing? She asks him if he has any other wounds that need healing, and he shows her wounds he sustained when fighting Helena that litter his abdomen. She sets to healing them, and the intimate moment sends them both over the edge. And I'm just thinking, mate, didn't you just see him get down and dirty with your best friend like 3 days ago? Like, he was really getting into it, and there was no conversation around that. This reads like someone's wet dream. You get all the ladies and none of the consequences. But she's turned on, and they pash seductively, tossing clothes and dignity out the metaphorical window. And Alexis is all like, "You are so tempting, but you need to know something. There is darkness inside me, Raina. Darkness you would not like." Oh, I feel so tingly. I just love it when tropes are shoved down my throat so seductively. And you'll never guess what she replies with. "There is darkness inside me too. Perhaps our darkness can be friends." What in the teenage romance is this? I couldn't. I had to put the book down when I read that. I needed time to recover. We get about 11 pages in my ebook of them sweating it out. They never actually go all the way, so I don't know why it had to be so long. When Raina suddenly gets mentally ambushed by the prince who has been watching the whole thing through her. Like, come on, I'm already so uncomfortable. For a ruler who's planned an invasion, you would think him to be rather intelligent. But as he's mind talking to her, the idiot laughs at how he distracted her and thanks her for giving him the god knife, only for her to awake out of her trance and lunge at the crow who was in the process of stealing said knife and kills it before it can take off with it. Like, dude, why reveal your plan before your crow has even taken flight? Like, what an idiot. How cool would it have been to see Raina have to struggle with losing the knife again, like an idiot, and have it be in her enemy's hands? Like, this story would have really taken a twist, in a good way. I was so excited when I read him say, "Thanks for the god knife." I was so ready for it to just not go anywhere. It's really disappointing. Raina cleans up the blood she sustained when killing the crow, and she tells Alexis that the prince has been watching them through the crows, and that he comes to her in her dreams. She also tells him about the god knife. Recognition blooms through Alexis, since he was the one who created it. She tells him that the prince wants the knife to be returned to where it belongs, which doesn't make sense to Alexis, since it would be of no use to the prince if that happened, and that he keeps referring to her as its keeper, and asks Alexis what that means. Alexis believes that her father had been cursed with the task of keeping care of the blade, and that it had latched onto Raina once he died. So essentially no one can take the knife from her. However, they can if she's not connected to reality. So that's why Finn was able to take it from her at the dance. He then asks her to give him the knife, because even though no one can physically take the knife from her, unless they can disconnect her from reality, he believes it will be safer with him. Sure, okay. And she just gives it to him? They leave the sanctuary and press on, eventually coming across a group of Eastlanders on the path ahead. They are luckily not spotted, but there is no way to get around, so Alexis decides to take them on himself. He leaves and he tells her to remain hidden and not follow him until he comes back for her. He leaves, and minutes later the earth quakes and a bright light rips through the trees, followed by the screaming of men before it abruptly cuts off. Raina rushes after Alexis, afraid of what she might encounter. There's a crater in the middle of the forest, obliterating the path and surrounding landscapes. As for the Eastlanders, there's no sign of them, though dark stains splatter the open earth and bits of wet flesh hang from the limbs of broken trees. Sorry to be pedantic, but aren't those signs of them? In the middle of it all is Alexis, kneeling like a fallen god. He rests his weight on one fist, while the other hand pounds his chest like he's driving a stake through his heart. Raina runs to him to help him up, and at her touch he jerks his head to face her. Black veins web the skin around his eyes, which too are enveloped in the same blackness. He tells her to leave, but she refuses and watches as he rocks back and forth, chanting a plea. This goes on for a while until the black veins fade and he eventually collapses in on himself. He comes to, and Raina helps him to his feet. She questions how he killed 20 men alone, and he doesn't really answer, but does promise he will reveal all once they get to safety. They trek to a set of caves, and exhaustion overtakes them, so they rest first before Alexis explains everything to Raina. She first asks him why he told her he had no magic, but used it back there to kill the Eastlanders. He explains that his magic is contained, asleep, and he can no longer access it with ease because it is tangled with another dangerous source of magic that he has little control over. She questions how this all began, and he tells her. So, if you're reading the book, get ready for an info dump. I'll try to summarize it. I honestly had checked out of the book at this point, so I don't know if I really understand everything. Okay, so there were these three gods: Neri, the god of the north; Asia, the god of the Summerlands; and Thamos, the god of the east, who were at odds with each other. They were at war, so Neri and Asher struck up a truce. He would provide an army to protect her lands from Thamos, and she would become Neri's lover. Kolden Basaka, the current Frost King, used to be a warrior for Neri 300 years ago. He was sent to guard the Summerland's Queen's gates during the war. They were attacked near the end of the war and came out victorious, so were invited to see the Queen, but during this audience he caught Aisha's eye. So she drugged him and took advantage of him, hoping this would lead to him falling for her. But Kolden was rightfully not interested, and had actually fallen for the Princess Fia Drumira, who is the current Fire Queen of the Summerlands. Because of this betrayal, Aisha condemned Kolden to immortality, though immortality is actually fickle, because one can live forever until someone manages to kill them. This is a These are Alexis's words. So she makes him immortal. So cursed with immortality, he retaliates, and instead of killing her, he chains her to a cliff on Mount Aura, hoping that if she lived, the curse could be undone. He fled back to the north and built a village and castle where he currently resides. Aisha refused to remove his curse, so her punishment was that she would never be able to make him love her. Years later, Thea, now crowned as queen, sent for Colden to make amends for her god's actions, swearing Aisha would not be there. Colden didn't wish to attend, but a friend convinced him to go and accompanied him there. Once Colden saw Thea again, he was infatuated all over again, and they spent the 3 celebratory days enjoying each other's company and falling back in love. On the 3rd night, Aisha disobeyed the queen's orders and showed up to find the 2 lovebirds entangled together. So again she cursed him, forbidding him from entering the city of ruin ever again, lest he crumble to dust, forcing him to leave without saying goodbye. This spectacle was witnessed by Neri, who approached Aisha again with a deal. Aisha could never have Colden, and Colden could never enter the city of ruin. But who would stop Thea from leaving her throne and seeking the man of the north? So Neri made Aisha a deal. If she gave him her heart again, this time for eternity, he would do the thing she could not. He would make Thea immortal as well, but worse, he would cast within her the element of fire, and in Colden the element of frost, that they may never, for all their infinite days, come together again. Thamos ended up condemning the 2 other gods to be buried at Mount Aura, and after their deaths he tried to take their lands, but was stopped by another god, God Erden, of the Western Drifts. So in retaliation, Thamos put King Geirin in power, who went on to employ a sorcerer called Undralag, who was offered a rib from Thamos to create the god knife so that he might kill Erden. The 2 gods fought, and Thamos successfully took him from behind and embedded the knife in Erden's chest, but with his dying breath, Erden pushed the knife through his body and through Thamos's, effectively killing him as well. Both their bodies were buried in the Grove of Gods that is protected by Queen Thea. So now that the Eastlanders know of this story, they want to capture the Frost King to use him as leverage to gain access to the Grove of Gods. When the battle was all over, Undralag abandoned his cause to live a quiet life with his wife and kid in the north, where he used to work as a spy, and the god knife was lost in time. Alexis takes off his shirt and shows her the runes carved on his body. He asks Raina if she studied the markings on the knife and tells her to really look at them. She realizes that the runes on the knife match the ones on his skin. These are Elkish runes. The young man who forged that knife used runes in his own blood to bind him to the blade. Runes can act as an enclosure. They trap necessary magic within objects, like a knife, or within people. They can also forge a connection. The god knife calls to Undralag, Raina. It's been trying to return to its maker's hands, its haven, its home. And has it? I sign. Finally found home? Yes. Alexis is Undralag. Wow, what a revelation. It's not like we'd already established that the knife was made by Alexis and the knife was made by a person called Undralag. So this revelation kind of falls a bit flat. I don't really understand the importance of the revelation though. It felt like a lot of build up for something I don't really care about. I'm not sure if it's a me problem or a problem with the book. Raina is more concerned about the fact that Alexis is a 300-year-old man, which valid, and that he's an Eastlander, but gets over that pretty quickly. Why can't we have any conflict between these people that is actually satisfactory? Hey, and you thought that info dump was over? Sorry to disappoint. We didn't actually let him finish. When Alexis was under the rule of King Gurhan, he was forced to gather sorcerers for the king's service, and those who refused were killed by him. When he fled, he was caught and his family was killed, so he spent months trying to find a way to get them back. He found a way to get to the shadow world to attempt to bring their souls back to the world of the living. Though he was unsuccessful, one soul latched onto him, and now he carries that around inside of him, that soul being the god Neri. Another cool story that isn't this one. And the fact that he was unsuccessful in bringing his wife and kid back is just never brought up again. It's not like it could have added to his characterization. Raina feels disgusted and violated, thinking she nearly let him lay with her when he had Neri inside of him. And the dude is all like, I tried to tell you. I told you I had darkness inside of me. How was she supposed to imply that by darkness you meant Neri? Why are you blaming her now like it's her fault you didn't tell her? That was your choice. And he says he deserves a thanks for keeping Neri locked up inside of him, instead of letting him out to cause havoc. Like it was his own stupid decision that nearly brought Neri back to the world of the living. If he never went to the Shadow Realm, then Neri wouldn't be back, and wouldn't need to be caged away. This man would do anything except take responsibility for his actions. He's just so unlikable. They kind of make up, and Alexis leaves to look around for some supplies, leaving Raina to ruminate on all this new information. She decides to scry the location of the Prince of the East and finds him about to take the Frost King's castle. Raina hears footsteps coming through the entrance of the cave and goes to attack, only to come face to face with Helena, now wraith-free. How she made a 4-day journey through the snow by herself with no food and managed to catch up to them despite not having a horse is beyond me. She does mention finding some camps of dead Eastlanders, so okay, yes, she could have found food there, but again, it's not written, and she shouldn't have been able to catch up on foot. I can suspend my disbelief when you introduce dragons, not when a human suddenly can outpace a horse with no explanation. The two sit, and Raina explains everything to her, and Helena explains how she came to have the knife. She saw it next to Raina's body back at the village, and believing she was dead, she took it. When she got captured, she managed to steal the knife back before fleeing. How she came to be possessed? Not sure. It seems to have happened between her fleeing and meeting up with Raina and Alexis on the lake. It's not ever written. Whatever. While Raina and Helena catch up, Alexis gets ambushed by a man who turns out to be a spy for the Frost King hiding among the Eastlanders. He informs Alexis that the Eastlanders are advancing on them as they speak, and that Alexis needs to tell him where Raina is so that he can protect her. Alexis doesn't believe him, so asks him to show him his face. But how is Alexis to recognize him? He said he supposedly left when he was a boy. Like, don't they have a code word or something cool to tell whether someone is trustworthy or not? Relying on remembering faces is incredibly unreliable and frankly unbelievable, so why would he think he would be able to remember it? He obviously doesn't, and just wastes time, so the man who names himself Ronan has to knock him out to keep up his illusion of being an Eastlander. Raina realizes that Alexis has been gone far too long, so scries him and finds him unconscious and captured by the Eastlanders, so the two gear up and head out to try to rescue him. Alexis eventually regains consciousness, awaking to discover he's been captured by a camp of Eastlanders. General Vex, the leader of the Eastlander squad and a very important man to the prince, squats before him, and Alexis goes to reach for the god knife, but the man holds it up in front of him, mocking him. He knows that Alexis is the famed Andraleg and that Neri resides within him because the Wraith told them. He monologues the prince's plan: 1. To ensure Neri isn't released, since he would mess with all their plans, so they need to send him back to the Shadow World. And 2. To resurrect the gods, including Neri, reconnect them back to their bones, and keep them contained so the prince can siphon their power and use it for himself, because they need to be in their original bodies for him to be able to do that, and not attached to Alexis's soul. So, if I have got this right, the Prince of the East wants to capture the Frost King to use him as leverage against the Fire Queen, even though he's already moved on to Nefel, which is a whole other issue I have, to get to the Grove of Gods so they can resurrect all the gods and hold them hostage so the prince can use his siphoning powers to steal the gods' powers so he can rule the world. Is that correct? Is that the plan? Because I think there's a few issues. I mean, Colden already moved on, so maybe Fia has as well. I mean, I'm sure she isn't pleased to hear he's shacking up with another woman. And doesn't that kind of take away from the whole punishment thing? I mean, it would hit so much harder if the two of them never found love again. It just feels so strange to sell this long lost lover's story only for the guy to just find another lover. And how does Nefel feel about all of this? Will Colden leave her if he finds out he has a chance to get back with Fia? And what if Fia couldn't give a rat's ass about Colden anymore, so doesn't give the prince access to the groves of the gods? But even if she does, how are these mortals going to capture and control 4 incredibly powerful gods? Alexis warns Vex that this is a stupid idea, which I'm glad we agree, and Vex grows tired of monologuing and decides they should probably go and find Raina, so the motley crew head on off. I should mention that Alexis can't use Neri's power to escape because he's bound in iron, and that nullifies the god's power. So I suppose that's how the mortals are going to control the gods. But still, that's so stupid. How are they really all that powerful when something as common as iron strips them of their power? Like, I'm mad that the mortals think they can overpower the gods, but they literally can, and that makes me mad too. The Eastlanders try to get Alexis to tell them where Raina is, but he refuses, ordering them to kill him because there's no way he would reveal her location. When suddenly Helena appears, informing them that she will take them to Raina's location, but only because she is dead. Alexis nearly drops at the news, overwhelmed with emotions and unable to believe Helena's words. It's cool though. We know she's not actually dead. I mean, if we actually believed this, it would be so much cooler. But revealing to the reader that the wrath was gone prior to this kind of ruins that. Vex orders her to take them to her, and they follow her to the caves. She tries to get Vex to follow her into the caves, but he proves too tricky for her, and instead sends in some underlings instead, who don't return, indicating to Vex that this is a trap. So he seizes Helena and gives Raina an ultimatum: reveal herself or he will kill Helena. And I'm just thinking, who thought this plan would actually work? For Helena to lure them all into the cave, where Raina would somehow be able to pick them off one by one. Raina comes out and gets grabbed by a few lackeys. Vex approaches her and grabs her by the hair and drags her towards Alexis, but is interrupted by the shattering of the protection shell that covers the region, indicating that the Frost King has fallen. Ronan takes Helena into the caves to punish her, but really they just talk and he makes her hurt herself by throwing her face into a rock, which I mean is worse than if he just beat her up himself. And when they return, Helena breaks free of her binds and attacks Vex, and ends up getting thrown off the hillside, colliding with a boulder and effectively dying. But doesn't, because Raina uses her healing magic to save her, so, it's not like we could actually commit to anything too tragic. Vex sees her doing this and realizes what her powers are, sends Ronan to actually kill Helena this time, but we all know he doesn't. Vex then kills, in quotation marks, Alexis using the god knife, and he kidnaps Raina. While Ronan is off with Helena, pretending to kill her, he hands her a knife to protect herself before returning to the group of Eastlanders, leaving her to fend for herself. She returns to the scene, finding the dead body of Alexis, and prays over him when he suddenly rises from the dead, with a mist rising behind him that takes the shape of a man. Alexis is alive, and Neri is no longer caged. Short and long of it is that Alexis can't die to his own blade, so that's how he survived. Raina awakes later in a tent, bound, and is greeted by the Prince of the East. He tells her that he had planned to kill her, but now he plans to use her. So all that time and effort he spent to catch her, just so he could kill her himself? Like, it could be believable, but the way it's written, it just isn't. He was always so curious about her. Never did he really indicate that he wanted her dead when he watched her in her dreams. He gets all gross again and tells her that she now belongs to him. Ugh. Raina cries over Alexis and Helena's supposed deaths, which again would be so much more impactful if we too believed they were dead. When she realizes she's not the only prisoner in the tent and that Nefel is standing off to the side. Raina tries to reach out to her, but the prince comes between them, offering her time with her sister if she agrees to heal his men and heal the cut on his face that she gave him, and she agrees. Ronan takes her from the tent and walks her past the wounded soldiers that she is expected to heal, but first pulls her into another tent where he tells her that he's on her side and provides her too with a dagger to conceal. He informs her that once she has finished healing these men, everyone is to head south to meet with some important men at Malgros who smuggled them across the sea. He will take her to see her sister, and then, when he returns, she will use the dagger he gave her to free herself from her binds, wound him, and escape. Raina considers this plan, but decides if she gets the chance to kill the prince, she will take it. The prince and Vex enter the tent, followed by a bound Nefel, and the prince wants to speak with her again. The layout of these scenes is rather confusing and probably could have used some more structural editing, but I mean, it's a bit too late now. He asks her how she does it, and she signs to Nefel, who translates for her. She demonstrates by healing her own wound, which amazes the prince, and he commands her to heal him. She tries, but finds his threads are smouldering, crumbling into flecks of ash, and that there are two threads when there should only be one. What she's feeling is the soul that the prince consumed to enhance his own power and grant himself immortality. One thread is the prince's, and the other this soul. Eventually these souls die out, so he needs to replenish. But if he consumes the god's souls, I suppose he believes they should sustain him for much longer. A commotion interrupts them, and a soldier enters, informing the prince he should check something out. The prince returns shortly, commanding Vex to follow him, as they have had an unexpected visitor, and he gets Ronan to put the women into the holds. With 3 other soldiers assisting, Ronan indicates to Rayna not to carry out their plan, and they all head to the wagons. They shove her into one of the wagons and Nefel into another. Rayna removes the binds from her wrists, as Ronan only tied them loosely, when she hears a voice talking to her. Whirling around, she finds a man sitting in the corner, chained up. It's the Frost King. I stand frozen. Mere days ago, this moment would have been everything. Just him. Just me. Him bound. Me with a hidden dagger. But nothing is as it was supposed to be. The world feels upside down. I meant to kidnap the witch collector. Oh, so we've remembered that was the initial plan again, did we? Not kiss him. And I meant to kill the Frost King. Not save him. And yet, here we are. Rayna indicates to her throat to show him that she cannot speak, and he realizes who she is. He asks her where Alexis is, and she signs back to him, but this dude doesn't speak in signs, so why would he ask her a question he knows he wouldn't be able to understand the answer to? During their attempt to communicate, the wagon lurches forward, and they start making their way up Winter Road. Colden looks out the window and exclaims how he's unsure what Alexis did, but things are going to go very bad very quickly. The wagon then suddenly careens to the side, and they're rolling down a hill before crashing to a halt, the wagon breaking apart around them. She hears fighting all around her, but can't see anything yet. She tries to help Colden from his binds, but fails, so he tells her to just run. But before she can, they spot Neri the god standing in the road behind them, surrounded by an army of wolves. Colden calls out to him, demanding what he did to Alexis. Neri approaches them, grabbing Colden by his chains and lifting him into the air. What did I do to him? I granted him mercy, which is far less than what he granted me, and nothing like what I will grant you. After 3 centuries, your time to die at my hand has finally come, and there are no other gods here to stop me this time. The two go at each other. Colden tries to use his frost power against him, but it's useless. I gave you that power, you pathetic human, and I can take it away. This is my land. I don't seat kings. The only crown in the Northlands belongs to me. And yet you'll stand here while the people of your land suffer a miserable Eastern prince who means to raise your enemies from the dead. That's what he wants, to thrive off their power. Then what will you do? Do you really think he will leave your grave intact for you to return to? If he can't take from you, he will make certain you are no more than his mist-made thing for eternity. You can forget being a true god ever again. Neri clamps his hand over Colden's chest, his claws digging in. Rayna stands to fight, dagger in hand, prepared to save the king, but Colden just yells at him to kill him. Instead, Neri reminds him that there are far worse fates than death, and pulls his hand away, pulling threads along with it. I mean, he was the one that said he was going to kill Colden like a few sentences ago, so... Colden cries out as the world around them grows colder, and Neri takes back his curse, stripping the Frost King of his icy powers. He then turns to Rayna and demands she tell him, obviously Alexis to us, but she doesn't know this, that he did save her and that his debt is paid, before he disappears in a cloud of mist. Colden groans and gets up, his chains falling off him, and tries to use his powers to no avail. Nefel finds them in the snow, and she and Rayna finally really reunite, which is nice. Colden interrupts their reunion, seeing as there is still a battle raging on. But Nefel instead runs to him and they kiss, and it's supposed to be sweet, but I just can't stop thinking about that whole star-crossed lovers thing with the Fire Queen. He tells Nefel about the removal of his curse, and they loot the dead bodies of the Eastlanders that didn't survive the wagon crash, and they all meet up with a few other witch walkers and make their way to the fight. Colden and Nefel dive straight in, but Raina stands back to take in the scene when she notices Alexis fighting alongside everyone else. Again, this would be so much more impactful if the reader didn't know he was alive, or if it was written better. She runs into the fray and takes on one of the Eastlanders, somehow able to keep back his attacks despite never actually being in a proper fight before, and manages to win. She notices the prince and Vex standing off to the side of the battlefield and sees the prince consume one of the souls floating above the battlefield from a fallen soldier. His eyes meet Raina's, alarm rising in them, and they stare each other down. Raina watches as they move, noticing that no one else can see them. The prince uses his powers to choke Nefel, but Raina is unable to get to her, now bombarded by an onslaught of Eastlanders. She fights them off, but when she looks around again she can't find Nefel. She sees Alexis take down the last Eastlander soldier, and they embrace. The prince sends his birds to attack them, but Raina uses her newfound fire ability to burn them up, and searches for the prince, who she finds standing on the eastern side of the path, with the god knife to Nefel's throat. Everyone can see him now, and they all freeze. He monologues about what he wants. He wants Raina. He wants Neri in the Shadow World. He wants the Frost King. Like, we already knew all this. This isn't some big reveal like it's written to be. Raina can sense the prince is siphoning power already from Nefel, so she acts, leaping at the two and throwing her knife. She's too slow, unfortunately, and the prince wraps himself and Nefel up in shadows, and tendrils of smoke latch onto Raina. Colden attempts to help her, but they both end up getting dragged away too. There's nothing but darkness. Okay, but then that's something then, isn't it? Sorry, I'm nitpicking again. I blink into focus. The world isn't blurred, it's filled with moving shadows. I turn. Nefel and Colden are behind me, on their sides, still secured by crimson shadows. I want to go to them, but a shadow loops around my middle, holding me tight. Then comes that chilling, jaw-clenching laughter, slipping in with the shadows, curling up and over my ears. The Prince of the East looms like a jailer, like someone who does belong here, godknife strapped to his hip. Welcome to the Shadow World. We can't stay long. This place likes to keep interlopers, so I only use it as a means to an end when I absolutely must. The question is, where to go from here? Suddenly the shadows clear, and they can see themselves floating over the woods above their companions, and Raina can see her body below, which I don't get. They're supposedly not dead, just passing through, but their bodies are soulless. So doesn't that make them essentially dead? And if they're dead, then that kind of messes with the whole big reveal that happens at the end of the book, that Alexis and Colden are linked, so if one dies, the other dies. But then if they're not dead, just separated, which doesn't make sense, what happens when the prince arrives somewhere else? Are they just bodiless? Or does the body just disappear and reappear with them when they get out of the realm? Every other depiction I have seen of mortals traversing the death realm, they keep their bodies because if they didn't, they would be dead. So this doesn't make sense to me. Were Nefel's and Colden's bodies brought with them? Because there's no mention of them lying around. But then why was theirs but not Raina's? Wouldn't the prince need her alive in order to use her magic? But for this next scene to work, her body has to remain behind, but that doesn't mean any of this makes sense. I understand you wanted this scene to happen, but you need to prepare for it better, and it's not working the way that you've written it. Alexis is cradling her body and has a dagger in his hands. He takes it to carve a symbol in his skin, then reaches down and draws the same symbol on her body. He then leans down and starts chanting, and she realizes he's trying to bring her back. The prince notices this as well, so he continues dragging the three of them away to somewhere. Rhaena fights back, digging deep to find her power reserves, and she creates flames that consume the shadows holding them, and sends them to attack the prince. The flames consume him too, and he flails around, trying to extinguish them. She feels the tether that Alexis created tugging her back to the real world, but it's still not strong enough to pull her out. The prince recovers and lunges at Rhaena, pinning her to the ground with the god knife. She fights him off her and charges at him, fends him off and reaches for Colden and Nefel again, and they stand united as he comes for them again. The prince monologues his plan again instead of recapturing them, giving Alexis enough time to pull them out, but without Colden. For some reason he sacrifices himself so they can get out, but I don't understand why he had to do that. He says it's the only way, but I didn't see how it was. I mean, they were already kind of out, swimming in an abyss away from the prince and about to be dragged back into reality. So why did he have to go back? But also, how is she able to bring back Nefel? The tether is tied to her. So does that mean Alexis has bonded with Nefel as well? Because that's the magic he used to bring Rhaena back. None of this feels like it was properly fleshed out, and I don't like that no one thought that it was important. Rhaena awakes, and her and Alexis share a moment, and the book reminds us that these two have only known each other for a very short time. And in that time, Alexis has willingly released a very powerful and very angry god on the world just to save her, when he could have very easily done that himself, seeing as she was just in a wooden carriage. So kind of feels like a waste. And also, what was he thinking? Again, this could have been really good if it was built up that way, but it just wasn't. Their love doesn't feel that strong. Nothing in his character indicated he would willingly do that for someone since he's never done it before. We didn't see the desperation or the life or death choice, none of it. We didn't even know what the prince was going to really do with her. It was all so vague. I don't understand what any of the stakes are. It just seems like there were so many other options rather than condemning the world by raising a god. The thing that they were trying to stop. So if they were going to do the thing they were so desperately trying to avoid, it needed to be the last viable option, and it just wasn't. Here he also explains how he and Colden are also bonded, so if he dies, so does Alexis, which Rhaena can't deal with because she's scared that she's going to lose him, so she runs out to deal with her emotions herself. Alexis calls a meeting the next day, and they plan to go rescue the king. He tells Rhaena and Nefel that he doesn't expect them to join them. Rhaena now has her sister and can run off to find the peace she wanted at the start of the story, but they refuse and decide to join in the fight. Rhaena somehow interprets Alexis not wanting her to join him in the fight as him not wanting to be with her. Like, he just used a spell to bond you to him for life. What do you mean he doesn't want to be with you? Also, does this mean that if Rhaena dies, Alexis dies, effectively curing him of his immortality? I think I need to think about that one a bit more. It's okay though, because they make up the next day and we get like 21 pages of sex. I had to skip over them, but of course, we can't just have the couple be happy. There needs to be a love triangle. So Helena asks Rhaena to scribe for her and find her father. And when she does that, she sees him accompanied by Finn. And so all these dormant feelings for him rise to the surface, even though she broke up with him 3 years ago. And he really isn't a believable contender, but c'est la vie. And the book ends with the starting of their journey to save the king. So that's book 1. Book 2 and 3 are out as well. I don't have access to them on my library app, and I'm not spending money on them. So I guess I'll never know what happens. But I did read the synopsis on them, and it looks like Raina may die, because Nefel is the main character of book 3 and has to strike a deal with Neri to do something. But she ends up falling in love with him. So I assume Colden gets back with the Fire Queen, and it all just sounds very silly, and I'm sure a lot of people will have a great time.